Delegates, guests and web viewers, I would now like to invite New South Wales Farmers President James Jackson to the lectern.
Agriculture in New South Wales is at a crossroads with so many challenges ahead of us. There's a huge opportunity that comes with overcoming these challenges. The mission, if you choose to accept it, is difficult, but it's not indeed impossible. New South Wales Farmers Association, like the farmers that own it, has to transition and evolve in this time of challenge. 12 months ago, you gave me the honour to lead this organisation on an agenda to evolve, reconnect and reinvigorate the organisation. At that election, you also gave me a new board, which I must thank you for. I didn't think I'd enjoy chairing a board, but it's been very productive and a rigorous board, and it's been a joy. Oh, okay. Surprisingly, it's the green button. I'd like to thank every one of them for their diligent and considered wisdom in the boardroom when navigating some of the difficult governance and strategic challenges that we've had. I'd especially like to thank the senior team of Chris and Rebecca, who have been rocks on whom I've regularly relied for advice and guidance. I'd also like to thank the committees, and especially the chairs and the executive councillors, who have worked diligently on their respective portfolios to shape, advise and execute the policy agenda you have given them. I refer you to the proceedings for a summary of their work program for the work program for those committees. Of course, this organisation does not work without the enormous contribution of the staff, whether it be the policy advisors or the administrative staff. I'd like to thank every one of you for your wise and fearless advice to me. What has happened with the organisation? My slides have changed in order a little bit. With our theme this year, one of the things that we've been doing is looking at some health issues with respect to farmers, and certainly with the drought that's on at the moment, we're seeing quite a lot of mental health issues. One of the things I do, I suffer from some depression from time to time myself, and one of the things I've been doing is doing a bit of a run around St Leonard's every morning. I went for a run this morning actually, and that's certainly helped me. And what we've decided to do is to do a little bit of an awareness program for Are You OK? At the City to Surf run this year on the 11th of August. And if you've got a few Ks in your legs, it'd be useful to go out and register at the registration desk at the Secretariat, and we'll take a list and we'll get a bit of a team and get some Are You OK? T-shirts on and enter a team. We've entered the team. What else has happened? At the time of my election, we'd commenced a search for a new CEO. The outcome of that search was sitting next to me. Peter Arkell has a modern CV, having worked in government, thankfully, only for a short time. He spent some time as a policy officer down at the NFF and spent an interesting time at Syngenta, working in Switzerland on some global issues of trust for that particular chemical company. You'll hear from Peter shortly. Well, you've heard from him already. At the time of the last conference, the organisation had just completed the purchase of 154 Pacific Highway. With the rezoning of St Leonard's, the previous building had become an attractive development play. Previous boards had made a very wise purchase. We have moved to the new building and now occupy the 4th floor. We have commenced with the strategic planning process, with the current strategic plan due for a rewrite in 2020. I know to many, strategic planning appears somewhat esoteric and removed from the here and now. I'd actually disagree with that. Strategy sets culture. Strategy sets the direction of an organisation. Strategy is the way you influence the operational template of an organisation. Strategy is how you create that framework to monitor and measure success. Strategy, it must be dynamic and it must be able to respond to change. I'm actually a fan of strategy because of somebody in this room. If you're wondering why you're getting $350 for your lambs in the middle of a drought, something that's never happened before, it's largely because of people like David Kingham, who put an export plan together for the sheep industry 30 years ago. I've seen strategic plans work. Setting a meaningful strategy for an organisation such as this is not easy. I need your help. In your Origin Energy satchel is a card with "Have Your Say" on it. There is a QR code on the back with a link to a survey. Scan it with your phone and fill out that survey. And do make some comments in the boxes available. Feel free to be frank, although I don't really think I have to tell people in this room to be frank with me. You're brilliant at that. But do fill that out, because it is actually useful. It is your organisation, and setting the strategy, it's important to have your input. As I've said, the board has been working their proverbials off on a number of issues that have been due for review. We've seen the organisation develop a procurement policy which has seen some of our relationships tendered and some savings banked. We've seen a rewrite of the maternity leave policy. We've seen put together a board charter, member charters in the pipeline, review of the representative allowance, regional lobbying strategy, review of the relationships with the peaks. There is plenty going on. There's some serious work being put into a business plan. We put together a magazine committee to deal with some of the commercial issues around the magazine. It's proved a really valuable tool. However, with the drought, there's not many tractors being sold out there, so the ads are down on budget. I'd like to thank that committee for its diligent work and the serious amount of work that's been done on that issue. The job of reform is never complete, as this year has revealed some potential gaps in the Constitution. Yeah, that's right. So I'm announcing that we're going to have a Constitutional Reform Committee, which is always fun, to look at some options to refine the Constitution, to put to members at the next conference. These things are dynamic documents that need continual review. They must be fit for purpose. Enough of the internal stuff. What's this well-oiled machine of yours, or should I say linchpin for your business, been up to in our core activity of influence? There's nothing like an election or two to get a new team in the office focused. Peter comes into the role of CEO in December and has a state election in March and a federal one soon after. Peter picks up and refines a plan that Matt Waring, our interim CEO, had put together with staff over the previous few months. Peter, with some serious input from staff, and James, who had been in the job for a full 2.5 seconds himself, launch into an election campaign. What could possibly go wrong? Well, surprise, surprise, it didn't work out too bad. A number of our asks being picked up by various political parties, and a number of very successful farmer forums that saw our policy leaders have an opportunity to chew the ear of some of those movers and shakers that were in the mix at the election. I would acknowledge the response of all the political parties for engaging in these forums. They were great and engaged and were very accessible. This was the one at Wingham, and we had somebody from the Labor Party, the Coalition, the Greens, the Greens at that stage, and the Shooters and Fishers. And I'd like to acknowledge the regional chairs, the people who chaired those meetings, and the branches that hosted those meetings. You were fantastic. Thank you very much. I remember leaving the forum at Dubbo quite late to look around and see Clayton Barr surrounded by a posse from the Beat Committee. He actually told me later, where's Peter? He told me that he really actually enjoyed the experience and liked the interface with real people out in regional areas. That has worked well. Our election campaign included a social media campaign that proved quite successful. but showed us there's some serious room for improvement, and I think Peter will elaborate on some of those improvements, our activity in that area. It is an activity that we could possibly benchmark in that strategic plan. What are the challenges ahead? Well, unfortunately, drought is the obvious here and now issue, and I acknowledge the work of the Coalition on drought policy in New South Wales. Cathy Rankin with the NFF did a reconciliation of drought measures around Australia, and the New South Wales government actually came out on top of the tree. And I did a panel with Fiona Nash at the Bush Summit there last week, and she described the Farm Innovation Fund as a game changer in drought preparedness policy. With deteriorating conditions around much of the state, and as Reverend Dale suggested to you, the north is not good. With deteriorating conditions, we have to ensure that we get the measures right and ensure that we make the available programs as accessible as possible. Cathy, Wayne and Chris and the Drought Task Force have done a tremendous amount of work in the drought space, and I'd like to thank them for their continuing effort. It's a thankless task, as more is hardly ever enough. What a constant theme this year has been the attacks on agriculture is coming under from a series of sources: trespass, nuisance laws, farm invasion, land use conflicts, consultation process. Lack of consultation. It's all over the place. So it is time to put a right to farm in place. The state government have committed resources to a right to farm agenda, and rightly, they want it to mean more than just nuisance law, that nuisance law model they tried in Tasmania. Hopefully it'll look like a suite of reforms under a new Regional Planning Act. The work is considerable from our perspective, and then in this space I'm announcing a Right to Farm task force to bring together a number of our policy asks into an RTF package. We've increasingly seen this year a series of media stitch-ups: glyphosate, live export, cotton, irrigation, rice, poultry, pork, dairy. The list goes on. In the Middle Ages, witch hunts were a brutal but effective way of getting rid of troublesome women, and some men for that matter. The modus operandi of an effective witch hunt would be to spread disinformation about an individual that would then incite the mob, and hopefully then they'd run along, they'd have some sort of sham trial, and then they'd burn, drown or stone the annoying person in question. Does that sound familiar? At the moment, many industries are being demonised by an orchestrated campaign of disinformation and the subsequent emotional manipulation of a largely disconnected urban population. Modern communication means that inciting the mob is pretty easy. Social media influencers can reach hundreds of thousands at the press of a button. Pleas of innocence are just background noise. The next part of the stitch-up is you get a couple of 100,000 signatures on a get-up poll. Then you can claim the industry has lost its social licence. It sounds official, doesn't it? Social licence. It's very binary. You've either got it or you haven't. It's very official. It's a licence after all. It's the language of the thought police. Listen carefully to the people who use it. Why don't they use the word trust? And what's wrong with an evidence-based approach to informing public policy? Going around a number of your industries, you're actually very good at what you do. You're very good. Don't be afraid of defending it. If some latte-drinking hipster from Surrey Hills or a disconnected Double Bay professional has been emotionally manipulated and thinks you're evil, please feel free to correct them. Try Sky if the drum knocks you back. You can direct them to a well-labelled choice of product that suits your needs. Market-based solutions are very economically efficient. But those who are advocating to acquiesce to those legislated agendas, that is legislated agendas, trying to placate the irrational demands of the mob, I give you this advice. While you have Orwell's thought police manipulating the mob, you're not going to get away with that stay of execution. They will burn you in the village square. Be transparent about what you do and stand up for it. It's pretty easy. The quiet Australians are right behind you. Thank you.